All righty. Good evening, everyone. Good evening, everyone. Hope you guys are doing well. I am super excited about tonight. Uh, this has been a situation that I've actually been looking forward to having for a long, long time. One of the things that I have really enjoyed about doing Podcasters Live is that to have amazing guests on, and tonight is going to be no different. How are you guys doing? I'm Steve Worthy. I'm host of Podcasters Live. Our goal is to help podcasters grow their community and their influence through live streaming. We feel that the number one problem that podcasters have is not getting started, it's discoverability. And we're going to talk a little bit about that tonight. We have an amazing guest tonight, and that is Cher Jones. And I'll be back here in a second to talk a little bit more about her right after these messages. So this is how I typically introduce this young lady, because we're no strangers. We're no strangers. I had the pleasure of having Cher on my podcast, the Worthy Podcast, which is now Retail Leadership with Steve Worthy last year, and then I also had her on my live stream. And here's how I came to find Miss Cher Jones. So about 2 years ago, I was in the process of trying to figure out how to change my brand, figuring out what I needed to do a little differently, and I came across this amazing, talented young lady, super smart, had this kind of crazy accent, and I had to figure out what this accent was. And it was actually just because she's from Canada. And but here's the one thing that I truly enjoyed once I finally got to know her is that our mutual love of hip hop. We may talk a little bit about that tonight. And I know she is aghast, and she's probably a little pissed off at me because I'm making fun of her Canadian accent, but that is okay. Please welcome to Podcasters Live, Miss Cher Jones.
How about it, eh? Oh my gosh. I can't believe you just made fun of my Canadianness, eh?
I, I, I knew that was coming. I knew that was coming. I knew that was coming. So Cher, I could talk all day about you and what you do as a keynote speaker and a brand strategist, but I always like to allow people to tell the audience a little bit more about themselves. So the floor is yours. Talk to us a little bit about who you are.
Well, here I am, really excited to be here, Steve. This is just an awesome opportunity to just join into your community because you have a fantastic community going on. And for those of you who don't know me, my name is Cher Jones, and I am a personal branding strategist, trainer, keynote speaker, and I specialize in your brand at work. So we know right now that this is a hybrid world and your brand is at work whether you are working it or not. So what I do is I help professionals, leaders, consultants, and experts develop a brand that makes people want to work with them, for them, refer them, champion them, and learn from them. So that's what I do through my training, keynotes, and coaching.
Excellent, excellent, excellent. Well, before we get started with our questions, because we got a whole bunch of stuff that we're going to talk about here tonight. I do want to welcome a few people that are here in the audience tonight, and make sure that we give them some shout outs. How you doing, Mr. Hilo? He's going to be actually on the show. I think, when are you going to be on the show? Is it May 14th, something like that? I can't remember, but I'm excited to have you on the
Correct.
show,
You're right.
Dr. Hilo.
A day away from my birthday. So,
Yeah,
hey.
it can't be the 14th. That can't be the 14th, right? Yeah, so it's coming up here. It's coming up here. I'm
Mhm.
excited to have him on my show. Hello, Shantae. Hello from Baltimore. Hello, how are you? And then we also have Hi Cher Jones with a heart. Oh my gosh,
With
that
a
has to be
heart.
somebody that I know. That has to be somebody special. We'll check that one out too. Hello from Michigan. This is exciting. Harry, you're excited? Dude, you have no idea about what's about to go down. You have no idea. Because when we get together, forget about it. All the gloves come off. How are you doing, Sharon Steve? Real Chicago. What's going on, big guy? And Samantha, how are you doing? Good to see you. All right. What else? What else we got here? Being authentic. All righty. All right,
I
Davina.
love it.
I appreciate that. Who else we got? Thank you. The new intro is nice. You pay attention. You care. You care. You care. Thank you so much for doing that. Queen Cole, how are you tonight? Good evening. And Juliana. Yay. Let's go share. There you go. We got people coming in for
She's my
shares too.
club she's my clubhouse, like, baddie. She is awesome. She's amazing, and it's great. I haven't been on Clubhouse in a while, so she was somebody that I was doing a lot of shows with, so it's great to see her as well. And
Good.
all those people on LinkedIn, everywhere else, it's so great to see you guys repping and showing up here on Podcasters Live. And speaking of repping, I know I'm like grabbing the mic. I'm sorry,
No,
Steve,
go for it.
but I'm repping the
See?
merch. We
Boom.
matched.
Boom.
Look at that, guys.
Boom.
This guy has merch, and I thought, this is something I need in my life. Who doesn't need the
Well,
merch? So I
that's
want to
right.
show up right.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much for that. I appreciate the shout out. For the record, I've never heard you use
Thank you. Thank you.
because she
This is
represses it.
something I do.
She
I
represses
don't
it.
even know if I repress it, but I don't use A. But he's convinced that I have this Canadian accent that just slips in and out. And I'm like, no, that's not it. Well, that's
W-
okay.
Well,
I'll roll
yeah,
with it. I am Canadian and I'm okay with that.
I'm okay with it too. I'm okay with it too. I'm okay. She makes fun of my New York accent too, so that's okay. I'm okay with that. How are you doing, Gabe? Good to see you here. And Troy, how are you? Hey, Cher Jones. Oh, we got crew. We got crew.
We got
Keisha's
crew. Look
we
at
got
my
crew.
crew.
We got
Oh,
crew.
you guys are showing up. I
Brian's here.
appreciate
How are you
all of
doing,
you. Hey,
Brian?
Brian, another one of my clubhousers.
Socially active is one of my favorite live streams. We're gonna get into that too because that was one of the ways that I found Cher. And she wouldn't share some of her trade secrets with me, but now
No.
she has, which is too late now. Everybody's, I'm done talking to her about that, but I'm okay. We'll talk a little bit. Wow, oh wow, thank you, Julian. Okay, all right. Looking forward to the stream. We're going to get into this in a second. I just wanted to make sure we connected with everybody over here. And here's the other thing. Hey, from Toronto, Keisha. Good to see you. All right. So if you do have a question for Cher Jones and I tonight, please, because it looks like we're going to have some pretty decent number of people here tonight. Make sure you just put a Q in front of it so I can make sure I put that to the side. So that way we can make sure that we address it and connect as well too. So we are talking tonight about how do you focus in on possibly kind of growing your brand, but in a different vein. We're going to talk about it from a podcast standpoint and how can you create a podcast at work. So share.
Mm.
This is one question I always ask, the guests. First question I always ask, in your own words, your own definition, your own perspective, what's a podcast?
Okay, so I was thinking about this and thinking about this like all day. Okay, and what came to mind for me was a podcast is a produced conversation, whether it's a highly produced or minimally produced conversation that is designed to either entertain, educate, inform, influence, or persuade. There's so many different things it can do for you, but especially if it can include multiple options that I just mentioned, and they can be long, they can be short. They are a conversation at the end of the day that's produced with a purpose, and that's all I got for you.
That's all you got for me, and
That's all I got.
that's amazing, right? I think here's why I say that's amazing because I just wrote it down. And those of you who know me, even though I have the recording for this, I will sit down and I'll have my head down, and I'm not falling asleep. I'm actually writing down a question, just to
Except for that
follow up.
one time.
Except for that one time I fell asleep. Except for that one time I fell asleep. So I love it. A produced conversation, right? Because I
Mhm,
think the tendency is that we get so focused in on audio versus video versus live stream versus all these different, like, I think, outputs of
mhm,
that produced conversation. So I love how you define that. So here's the one thing that I wanted to talk about. I wanted to talk about this idea about creating your own brand at work because that's
mhm,
something that you talk to tons and tons of companies about. You have so many things going on LinkedIn. We'll talk a little bit about that as well. So when you start having somebody think about kind of creating a podcast at work, What is your thought process, and how could somebody kind of go about doing that? Well, maybe lay the foundation so that they can understand a little bit first about their brand, and then how a
Mhm.
podcast can actually help them grow their brand.
Okay, so yeah, it does start with that foundation of building their brand and recognizing what they want to accomplish in their brand. So I think that there are three strategies that I have coined as categories. So there's the first strategy, which is just a ready strategy. That's where someone, if you Google me, you look me up, you check me out on LinkedIn or any internal social platforms, what you'll find is up-to-date information about me. You'll know what it is I do and how I can help you. Because most people, when they're thinking about their brands, first and foremost, they think about it from a resume perspective, which is more employment seeking based as opposed to showing up in a service-centric way. So when you can reframe that first to say, okay, well, you look me up, you know exactly what it is I do and how I serve. And then you can actually take my language and talk about me. And so that would be like a ready brand. And then there is an active brand. And this is where this is where you're starting to think maybe a podcast might be a good idea. So this is where your brand is built more so around your performance objectives and your career goals to some degree, but it's designed to help you do well at work, to crush it at work in your role. So what you're thinking about when I think about that active brand is really around, how can I use my brand to get those phone calls in? How can I use
Mhm.
my brand to influence and persuade my team, or whatever it is they need to accomplish in their role? How can their brand be a tool to get there?
Mm,
And then the third brand or the third level is like at a driven level.
mm,
So this is where you're thinking outside the company and bigger into the industry,
mhm,
right? And this is where you are thinking thought leadership again, bigger vision. And it may not necessarily be directly related to what you do at work, but it's where you want to be. And it could be passion driven, it could be knowledge driven, it could be industry driven. Whatever the case may be, is you have a bigger platform so you can see how it grows.
mm,
So to bring in your question around developing a podcast at work,
mhm.
you can do this. There's a few ways that you can do this. You can use it as a networking tool. So if you wanted to start, and so I think before I even dive into that, I think there's
Yeah,
something that we need to talk about in the sense of reframing what we would typically think as a goal for a podcast,
good, good.
right?
You took the words right out of my mouth. Thank you for saying that. Go for it.
So most people, when they think about starting a podcast, they're thinking about, downloads, and they're thinking about the I guess it would be in the driven category. Like they want to get out all over the place. They want to be listened, heard, and maybe become famous and maybe quit working so they can have their
Mhm,
podcast and all that good stuff. That's typically when I talk to people when they're thinking about a podcast, which is awesome. Those are great goals and it happens all the time. But that doesn't mean it needs to be your goal if you're thinking about this medium of having a produced conversation that has an intended outcome, whether it's to entertain,
mhm,
persuade, blah blah blah, all those things I talked about. So when you pare that down and take out the celebrity, the fame of it, and
mm,
think, you know what, I want to use my podcast as a tool, as a tool. Now that
mhm.
takes away audience because
Come on.
you're still gonna monetize it, but not in the way that we typically think about it. So monetize it into relationships that can create opportunities for you is one. So you can be interviewing people at work, right? That you now have a reason to reach out and have access to them and create something that puts them on a platform and also creates an opportunity to build a relationship. So that could be one. So just from a visibility perspective inside, and getting into, let's say your strategy is really, I want to get into this area, this division, this project field. I want to leapfrog from this type of client to that type of
Mhm,
client. Well, how can I showcase what I know and who I know? Right? So you can create a podcast around that where it has a limited audience, maybe in the beginning, but a very intentional audience.
yeah.
And then you could take it a step further. Let's say you're in sales. You can start interviewing and talking to clients. You could talk to vendors and other partners that you work with to collaborate on and to serve your clients. You can talk to subject matter experts, and this becomes more of a sales tool, right? Or it could be about culture. It could be about another big one right now, especially in this in our current world, is a talent attraction.
Mm,
So you can
mm,
create a podcast with recruiters, with talent like TA folks, so talent attraction folks, and all that stuff, where they need to talk about open roles, or they need to talk about the culture of the company so that they can bring in new candidates and educate them in that way. So I could go on, so I will pause and
mm.
allow you to speak on your own damn show.
I'm just saying, man, gosh, jeez, you just gave me a lot to unpack. But I think everything that you said goes back to, I think, your definition. That's why I always want to start with a definition of
Mm,
the podcast, which is a produced conversation. Because everything that you talked about, from, network tool, sales tool, monetization, being ready, from, all the different things from a brand standpoint, ready, active, and driven. And then I threw in thought leadership, because I know we can probably talk about that here in a second too. But the
mhm.
produced conversation, right? I think basically what you're talking about is in the context of, like, how can you be more strategic with your time, with the conversations that you have? How can you
Mhm.
utilize podcasting as that strategic tool to produce conversations that are, one, going to position you as a thought leader, but then more importantly, whether you're it's altruistic in what you're thinking about, or is it for the company? What are some of the what's is am I going too far afield
No, you're
in your
right. You're
thought
right on the
process?
money.
Go ahead.
You're right
Okay.
on the money.
Yeah. All right. Well, one thing before we move a little further, because I didn't want to break these down. I did want to break down a little bit more about ready, active,
Mhm.
and driven, because I think as people start to think about this idea about doing a podcast to work, I think they have to know when they're actually going to be positioned from a brand
Mhm.
standpoint and a brand awareness
Mhm.
standpoint in order for them to actually do that. Could you break down the idea about being ready just a little bit more for people? So, because I think for the people, some people kind of came in a little late, and I want them to make sure
Okay.
that they hear that.
So the ready piece is just being opportunity ready. So there's what I call the hidden opportunity market, similar to the hidden job market, which is external, trying to get jobs and who you know to get the jobs. I think internally at companies, there's a hidden opportunity market. So, for example, why do certain people get chosen to speak on panels or to speak on behalf of the company? We look at, so there's somebody in the audience right now, Shantae. She is always, no matter what company she works for, she is always chosen, tapped to speak on stage on behalf of the company and show up and represent in different areas. So that would be what I would call a hidden opportunity. Not everybody gets it, but you can position yourself to be considered. There are other areas. So, for example, companies are now recognizing the need to create content, right? So they are co-creating content with their employees. The reason why I bring that up is that when you have an opportunity ready brand, so when somebody looks you up, it is current, active, and it clearly articulates what it is you do and how you help now. So it's value centric, service centric brand. People are able to think about opportunities that match, as well as if there's a project or a position within the company or within the industry, you're ready for it. You're not embarrassed when somebody checks you out online and has no language to talk about you. So that would be ready.
I love what you just said. Okay, because hold on for a second. Right. There we go. That's for you. Wheeler coming in. You just said giving people the language to speak about you. I think that probably glossed over and went over a lot of people's heads. So that's why I hit the rewind button. Could you
Okay.
talk a little bit about that? Because we're gonna get this, look, guys and gals, this all goes into the idea about doing a podcast. Because one of the first things that you'll learn and know about me is that the more you know yourself, the more you can say no. And so whenever I talk to my clients about coaching, before we get into gear and your concept and all of that stuff, you really have to know a little bit more about who you are, because a podcast is nothing but an outcropping of who you are. And so
Mhm.
giving people the language to talk about you actually helps out. So could you just talk a little bit about that? Because I think that's so cool.
Okay, so and I think it's really important because I think most people don't even have the language to talk about themselves.
Boom,
So,
boom,
boom, right
boom.
there, right? So
Sorry.
so basically, the problem is if you don't have the language to talk about you, right? Talk it to be able to articulate your value and what you bring to the table and even what you do for others, how can you expect other people to talk about you? They may say things like, "Yeah, she's great. She's dependable, she's reliable, she's an awesome personality." That's
Mm.
wonderful, but that doesn't sell me into a position. That just simply tells you the type of person I am to work with, but it doesn't tell me what I can do for, right? So there's the difference right there.
Okay, can do four. So, okay, if you guys did not watch the episode that Cheryl was on with me with retail leadership, you got to go back and do that. I'm not trying to cross promote because but she said this one thing that really struck an amazing chord with me, and I think it resonated with the entire audience, everybody that watched it. They said it was around the idea of no one cares.
Mm,
Remember that? And it said, you said, no one cares what you did. They care
nope.
about what you do. And I
Now,
just think about what you just said. Could you
mhm.
could you expound upon that saying a little bit? Because I think that will help a lot of people as we continue to build on this conversation.
Okay. So it's really important that, again, you are able to articulate what it is you do and how you serve, and you have places that people can find this information because people are only as good as their source.
Mm,
So, one, if you can't talk about yourself,
mm,
you're a bad source.
mm,
And that really sucks because you got to be able to advocate for yourself. But you also have to, especially in this current climate where there are champions and mentors and sponsors, they want to advocate for you. They see your value and your potential. But if you do not give them the language that sells you, which is different from character traits, right? This is
mm,
about expressing value, right? Those character traits are important, but they're not going to sell you into the job or sell you into the project or sell you into work with the next set of clients or onto a stage. So, it's really interesting that people need to work on their language and then have a place to put it, which LinkedIn is a great place to put it, but there are more than one places to do that. But also, so bringing it back down to podcasting and
mhm, mhm.
and what we're talking about today, this is a great place for you to showcase your value.
Yes.
So if you wanted to level up your game at work, and a lot of times what you need to do is show and prove that you can play in that position or with that
Mm,
opportunity, or you
mm,
have the knowledge and expertise to do so. So, and sometimes in your current role, you may not be able to exemplify that. So,
mhm,
by creating a podcast, this is the monetization of that podcast, is to let the right people hear what
mm.
you know. It's not about the hundreds of thousands of downloads. It's about the 5 downloads of the 5 people who are gonna
Come on,
push you into the next position.
come on.
Monetization right there. That could be a $20,000 monetization like that in 4 episodes flat. You know what I mean? Like, listen, it's not always about what we traditionally think of when we go into content creator mode.
All right, so I've saved this sound effect just in case, for people who, go to church and, they like the preacher and the preacher get on the roll. 'Cause Cher just got on the roll.
Amen. Hallelujah.
Woo! Mm, okay. You just crushed my head with just a whole bunch of stuff, man. And you've been knowing me for a while, so it's kind of hard to crush my head and to get me to stop talking and thinking about something. You just said show and play because in your current position, where you currently are, you may not be seen, right? You talk a lot
Mhm.
about hidden figure to influential leader, right? And so I'm
Right.
thinking, I want to kind of before we get into active and ready, I want to talk about that just a tad because I apologize, guys, if I'm going in this and down this road. This is all tying together, and if you're not getting any value out of this, then you're not listening, And if you're looking at this live, please let us know that you're tracking with us. Put hashtag tracking. If you have a question, make sure that you actually put a Q in front of it so that way we can get your question. I'm excited to put your questions, and I know Cher's excited to answer any questions that you have. If you're looking at this on a replay, you can do the same thing. You can go and put a question in there on any portion of this. Make sure you put a question in there so that way I can go back in there and Cher can go back in there and we can answer any question that you may have. All right. So
Mhm.
you talked about show and play, and that person may not have the authority, so to speak, right now in their current position. And you're
Mhm.
talking about that hidden figure piece. How how can someone who has how can someone self-identify first and foremost that, you know what, I am a hidden figure and that I need to be doing something a little bit different because they don't have the language to talk about themselves. They don't
Mhm.
have maybe the self awareness to understand where they currently are and where they currently fit within the organization, and then maybe what I need to be doing a little bit differently. Can you give somebody, I don't want like two
Yeah.
or three tips. I'm talking about that, but just give some commentary on that idea if you can.
Yeah, no, it's a really interesting thing. So as you start, so I find that hidden figures are often established professionals who've been in the game for a while. They've been working at a company for a while. They're watching new people come in and get opportunities that they know they deserve, but yet for some reason they're not getting a tap. Because we have to recognize now in this day and age, you can't wait for the tap. The
Mm,
branded wheel is the grease, okay? This is it sucks, but it's the truth. The branded wheel gets when people can advocate for you, when people have the language for you and they can talk about you more than just you're awesome, great person to work with, always
yeah,
dependable,
yeah.
all that stuff. Those are great things after I know what you do and how you can help me, right? Like that seals the deal, but we can't lead with that. So oftentimes, if for those people who feel like they're a hidden figure, they're like, if you're constantly seeing people get opportunities that you know you're the right fit for and no one
Mm,
even asked, you're hidden, right? And the thing is, and here's the thing for a lot of professionals, especially if they love their job and they've been at the company for a while, if you love your job and you're really good at your job, sometimes people just want to forget you in the corner because your job's getting done.
mm,
So I don't have to worry about hiring you because you're there and you do your work and you're dependable and reliable, but you're not selling yourself beyond that. It's just like, yo, do your work. Good. I'm so glad you're here. I don't have to think about you. And that's what
mm,
everybody wants. We don't want to have to think about things. So it's your job to give them an opportunity where they can think about you in the next. And that's why you have to give them that opportunity for them to see you there.
mm. Okay.
Yes, I agree with Sean. That's why you need a sponsor, not a mentor. You
Mentor.
need both,
Both. You need
right?
both. I agree.
But absolutely, and I know, Steve, you talk a lot about that in your retail side of the work that you do, but you absolutely need both. So,
You need both. Well, you speak about it a lot too, relative to that person that's in the room that's talking about you when you're not there, right?
mhm,
That's a
mhm,
sponsor. You know, one of the things that we think about from a mentorship standpoint is that you need, I think, different mentors based on the skill sets that you're trying to develop within your organization. It's not just
mhm,
a one and done thing with a mentor piece. So I think people need to think differently about a mentor based on their current skill set that they may be currently lacking, and then trying to
mhm,
find that person that actually has the wherewithal, the understanding, also maybe the brand cachet within the organization that can actually help you get to where you need to get to. All right, I'm done. I can go on and start talking about sponsorship too. This is not that show. Sherry, you got me going. You got me going. Okay. So let's move to active for a second, right?
mhm,
Um,
mhm,
and then I want to make sure that I talk to you a little bit about some of the podcasts that you host, and that you're a part of too. So we're going to talk about that in the tail end, because
mhm.
here's the thing, guys. Cher's actually doing this, right? So she's not just talking about this stuff, right? She's actually doing it. So let's talk a little bit about the active, the performance piece as you start to talk about that hierarchy of brand awareness.
Okay, so this is when active is when you're using your brand as a tool. So
Mm,
before it's your opportunity ready. People look you up, you're ready. But having an active brand is where you're starting to be very methodical about your connections. you're thinking strategically about how you're going to leverage your brand to accelerate opportunities and relationships. And that could be done through relationship building, through content, through engagement. There are so many different ways that you can do it, but you're actively embedding your brand into your strategy, which most people should, but they just don't think about it. So right now it's an incredible tool. And so that is where it's really, that active side is you're moving from credible, like you have this credible brand when you're ready, but then you are now moving into this influential piece because you're using it to move the dial to achieve your goals, both especially at a performance level. So looking at your role, how can you use your brand as a tool, but also to how do you get to what's after next, right? So like you're thinking about what's next and then what's after next. You're thinking long term with your brand as well, and you're using your brand as a tool to get there.
Excellent, excellent, excellent. All right, so the driven side
Mhm. Mhm.
of this brand is that the holy grail? Is that where a lot of people are aspiring to be, or and should they be there, or should people maybe find their like the movie Hitch, like this is my spot. Should I just like be right here
Stay in
and then
here.
and
This
stay
is your,
right here
yeah, this is
and
your lane. You
active
stay right
already? Is
here.
this my
Yeah.
lane, or should I
Um,
should I strive to be driven?
um, I think that probably your audience is striving for the driven zone because they want to be on that level of
Yeah.
developing their podcast, developing their live show, that sort of thing. So they're thinking bigger, they're thinking bigger audiences, they're thinking beyond a localized, intentional, specific network that can help you achieve very specific results at work or whatnot. They're thinking bigger, to be known, to build community, to develop influence, and become an influencer. That may be part of it, right? And however you want to define influencer, but it's like, I would say within the driven space is like, that's when you're thinking of being an industry expert influencer. Maybe you're thinking about, larger stages, right? Writing a book, being being called in the media, right? As an expert, as a contributor. So that it's just that bigger platform. And so it's larger platforms, and also doing more of something like this where you're on other people's platforms to grow your platform. So it's a growth mindset, or a significant growth mindset, because I think they're all growth mindsets at the end of the day from the real definition of it. But so should everybody be driven? Absolutely not. I think most people,
Mm,
most professionals
mm,
are very comfortable being in the ready, being opportunity ready, because
mm,
they're still leveraging their brand, but they may not, and they may vacillate in their strategy between ready and active, just because they're moving into that more strategic mode when they need certain things.
mhm,
But
mhm.
being ready is where I would say 80% of most professional, like 80% of professionals are probably going to be in that zone. They're not thinking about creating content, and they don't care, right?
Right,
And
right,
there's nothing wrong with that. But
right.
again, your audience, they're
Mhm.
moving from, they're in between active and driven, depending on what it is their goals are. So
Yeah,
yeah,
good stuff, good stuff, good
it
stuff.
just depends on what you want.
Good stuff. So let's talk about content creation, right? This
Mm,
is your, we've had numerous conversations, and I would just have an idea or thoughts about a concept or an idea. The next thing you know, you start speaking in copy, right? You start giving me you know all the the answers to the test, and I'll like send you something to look over, and I'm like, I don't know why I sent it to her, because she's just gonna rewrite the whole thing. Um, so now I'm at the point now, I'm just like, hey, could you, look at this, or here's my thought. But I said all of that to say is because you're extremely, extremely, you know, um, amazing at what you do. Your ability to be able to see things from a copy, content standpoint and strategy piece. So when we start to think about the either the ready person, the active, or the driven individual, what's a content strategy? What's something that they should be thinking about to include within their content. And I know that's a wide swath because it all depends on the industry. But I would think that there are a couple of things that should
Mhm.
that kind of carries forward across business disciplines.
Absolutely. So in the ready, you just want maybe a few pieces of what the industry calls evergreen content. So stuff that's not going to get old, but it shows what's inside. And it's again just going to validate your expertise. So it validates the expert that you say you are. And so that could be a blog post, that could be you guesting on someone's podcast or whatever, but just having a few pieces of content to showcase that you are the expert that you say you are, or you know what you're talking about, right? But that doesn't mean you need an active strategy to push content out there, because most people in the ready mode, people are looking them up, so they're coming to them, so they don't have to be an active creator. They just need proof, right? Because I look at content
Mm,
as the burden of
mm,
proof, right?
mhm,
We use it to prove our network, prove what we know, prove what we can do, right? Or prove what we've done. So when you move into the active to driven, and I would just say that between active and driven, there's just levels to this of how much more you want to do. But that's when you start to think about, well, I want to be, if let's say, for example, from a podcasting perspective, and you want to be a guest on other people's podcasts as well. So showing that proof, it's all about
mhm,
proving what you talk about,
right.
proving what you know, proving that you can help, proving that you've helped, proving that you've done. Like it's
Yeah.
just content is proof at the end of the day. So, how can you create engaging proof so that people believe you and trust you and want to refer you or learn from you or
Mm,
work for you?
mm, mm. How many times have you okay, so I'm gonna refer back to a post that you did on LinkedIn because this will
Mhm.
resonate with everybody. And it was about the brand, and it was about, well, this is what you say that you were going to get in the mail. And you use some pictures, and you use some just the idea of like, well, your brand should actually do what it says it's going to do. You
Yeah.
should do exactly what you say you should do. And I just
Mhm.
love how you provided those pictures as an illustration of like, well, your brand said this, but it's doing that. How can people help, balance that? Because we see this all the time. We see it in content creation. We see it
Mhm.
in, someone's out there, whether they're going for a job or even with a podcast or something along those lines. They say one thing, but honestly, the content and what they're really kind of going after is a little bit different. How can you help somebody balance that idea?
Yeah, well, the term that I
Yeah,
used
there
for
we go.
this was called it made me laugh when I used it, so I call it brand fishing, right? Like catfishing, this is brand fishing. Like, you can put up this, like, amazing brand, you get all the help in the world to have this, like, beautiful brand, but then you still open your mouth, or you still share your thoughts, and then if it's only, like, 2 clicks deep, like, you can't claim you're this expert, and then I could Google and, like, I can find out what you're saying in a headline, you know what I mean? So it's just there's a lot of things around what people put out there. So if you say you are, prove it. And that's what content is. You say you are, prove it with your content. So, and that's those disappoint, and then also prove it with the experience. So
Mm,
there's one thing that you can do in the sense of, you know, you can create the content and you could be really smart, but then the brand experience sucks, right?
yeah,
Just
yeah.
like so there's so many different ways you can look at brand phishing. But at the end of the day, is just your job is to make the interaction online be the same face to face, the same on Zoom, the same on email. Like it should just be one cohesive experience.
Mm.
And that is a solid brand.
Cohesive experience. And
Yeah.
I think that's where people fall short.
Mhm.
I think the tendency, and I fell victim to this too, as an early leader, early entrepreneur. When you start to think
Mhm.
about your brand, you think it was your logo and your color scheme, and you think yes, business cards, right? You guys remember business cards, and all of that, and it's all the aesthetics. And
Mhm.
people get so focused in on the aesthetics, and they can't actually deliver. So I'm glad you said that. So you have done, so much work, whether it's just been on LinkedIn or not just in LinkedIn, because I don't want to pigeonhole you in LinkedIn, because you got your own brand that you're actually growing yourself, right?
Mhm.
How did you develop this just ask share? Because I do want to go back and look behind you a little bit, because there is not one show that I can have you on if I don't talk about your personal brand and how you've been able
Mhm.
to develop your own personal brand and include certain things that you currently have that other people are probably scared to include.
Mhm,
How have you
mhm,
actually been
mhm.
able to be super duper comfortable with yourself and to have the whole just ask share mentality?
To be honest, it takes time.
Yeah.
It's just time over tension, and the tension just could mean stress of just doing it. But it is something that, because I've been honestly, I literally from, and I can own this, and it's interesting because we all deal with these moments where like, oh my gosh, I'm actually going to say it and mean it. And whether people believe me or not, that's not my problem. So I am literally a personal branding pioneer. I have been doing this and I got the receipts to prove it for 10 years now. You can go on YouTube and look up 99 problems,
Problems?
but my brand ain't one.
Yes, indeed.
And that is a talk I did about personal branding back in 2013. So just to drop, just to drop where we're at right now, right? So there's a concept that I think most people should start to embed into their brands, and I call it Easter eggs. So I love, if you are a MCU, a Marvel Cinematic Universe, or a DCU fan, you know that in this world there are things called Easter eggs, right? And they are either plot connections, twist, character, like inside information about characters, whether
Hmm.
it's their origin story or anything like that. And I think that in our professional brands at work, or wherever we are putting our brands out there, there are things, these Easter eggs become connectors. So you mentioned my background, which has the love, and if I go back, it will get a little bit more clear. So you
That's all right.
see the love of hip hop is clearly in my background, and it's funny, let me walk back to my so I'm a 70s baby, so and grew up in the 80s, and the 90s made me. But like, listen, like, I've got roller skates, this is all me. This is, so if you start to carry the forward and do the math, you'll realize that no, I'm not a millennial. I am well into Gen X. And this is like that background where first people are like, oh my gosh, I just broke the third wall because of the fact that, yes, this is not a green screen, right? This is my background. And this is these are the little Easter eggs, the little clues of Cher Jones that become a conversation piece beyond personal branding. Cause I can't talk, I mean, I could talk about this stuff all day, but
Mm.
no one wants to hear about it all day. So you want to give these clues and connection points where people can see you in a different light.
Excellent, excellent. And I think that I hope you guys understood that or caught that, right? About the Easter egg, right? So we're talking about it from a visual standpoint, right? But I think the other thing that you do with your overall communication is that you put in Easter eggs in your communication, in your copy,
Mhm.
in
Yes.
your in your videos. And
Mhm.
how have you been able to actually do that too? Because it's obvious you're confident from a visual standpoint, but then also
Mhm.
from a written words standpoint too. I think that's where people may kind of fall short, myself included, right? I mean, my copy is super duper business oriented, and as you guys can tell, I am super business oriented, but I kind of let my hair down, so to speak, when I'm doing this stuff. But my
You have some
copy,
of mine.
okay, I can have some of yours, thank you. But my
Yes.
copy is in that way, and so I've been trying to over time to kind of develop that muscle. How can people help kind of develop that muscle with their copy, and maybe some part of from a podcast standpoint as well?
So what you want to do is start reading your copy out loud. And here's the thing, and don't feel bad about it, because we typically, the reason why you're putting your brand out there is because you want to look great. You want to put out there, you want to sound smart, you want to look smart, but oftentimes that desire to look professional, sound smart, and put
Mm,
together, it it makes you bland and blend in. It's like stock copy. I know there's no such thing as stock copy, but there is. It's like if I can put your website copy, your podcast
Mm,
write up description on anybody else's podcast, and I
come
couldn't
on.
tell the difference,
Come on.
that is stock copy. And I do not know you, I do not hear you, I do not feel you, nor do I connect with you. So what you have to do is start to think about how you speak and how you communicate with people, and make sure that I love that, saving this. Thank you. Um,
Excellent.
caught my attention with the diamonds. But you want to make sure that you sound like you. So if you guys go to my LinkedIn profile, for example, I literally write the way I speak. But this is also a learned behavior. So I'll say in my thing is like, shocking, I know, right? Like I'll say things like that because that's the way I speak. And but what you want to do is, again, it goes back to what we talked about earlier, that cohesive brand experience.
Mm,
You got to sound like you. So if you have an academic style of communication in how you speak and articulate that yourself, then that's your style, and people will identify you in your writing. But if you go from speaking like me to all of a sudden having this academic tone, right, it's like, who am I speaking to? Who am I connecting with? Right? And you don't connect.
yeah. And I find that interesting, especially when you start a podcast, right? Because the tendency when you start a podcast is that you I hear this all the time. It's like, oh my gosh, I hate the sound of my voice.
Mhm.
People will say that. And I think that's twofold. I think it's they may literally hate the sound of their voice, but I also think part of that is that when they hear their content back initially,
Mhm.
it doesn't sound like them.
Yeah.
And it does, and it comes all, and it almost comes across like, I don't like my voice, but I don't really like what I'm saying because I'm really not kind of being true to myself. I'm speaking
Right.
from my own personal experience. When I had my first couple of episodes and I put them out there and I listened to them back and I was like, oh my gosh. And then my friend Walter, Gainers, who's in the audience tonight, I remember, so this is going to be instructive for somebody.
Mm.
I was up against the deadline to actually get an episode out, and I actually, wrote it out. I usually use bullet points, and I just kinda did like a script thing, and
Mhm.
I got it out, beat the deadline, bada bing, bada boom. Man, the dude called me. He called me. There he is. See, there he is. Me. Yes, you did. He called me out. He called me out. He was like, he called me. I said, dude, so what do you think about the episode? Yeah, about
About
that.
that.
About that. Dude, that didn't sound like you. It sounded like you were reading from a script. And I was like, dude, I was. So
Mhm. Mhm.
I'm just using that as an example for those of you who are thinking about this idea about podcasting and everything that we've been talking about from a brand standpoint to copy to your confidence, all these different things. They all make it important and an impression on people as well. So, Cher, you've been doing quite a few different podcasts
Mhm.
yourself. Could you talk a little bit about those, and then we're gonna move into some closing thoughts and things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I wanted to just jump on the bandwagon of what you were talking about as well, because I think it's normal for everybody.
Yeah.
Even I look at, so coming like transitioning into this part of the conversation around the other podcasts that I've done. So I started, or I was working on a podcast called Icons and
Hmm.
Insights, and it's a video podcast, so it's not on the iTunes and all that stuff. It's on it's on YouTube, and it had a very specific purpose, and it served its purpose really well. But I noticed from the first few episodes down to the most recent episodes, a significant difference in how we communicate. Me and my co-host communicated, the things that we were saying, and our flow and our energy. So I want to encourage everybody as well, as
Mm.
they start, even if they're starting a new project. Like, listen, guys, I started my career in broadcasting, right? So I'm no stranger to this, but I look at my first videos that that I produced myself, my first Just Ask Share videos before I even went into live streaming, and then my live streaming Just Ask Share live show. And I see the first to now, it's a totally different story. So you got to give yourself time. And I know, Steve, you talk about this a lot around, most podcasts, they drop off as like 6 or 7 episodes, something like
hmm
that.
hmm
But that's 'cause you haven't broke your stride yet. And when you get to that point where you get to be you on camera, I remember one time I was working in television and this producer said to me, he's like, you know what, Cher, what I really love about you is that you're yourself on camera. And then I'd never given that thought, but once I saw what he said, I caught myself when I wasn't being myself. So it's
mm
really important to recognize opportunities or see when you've been yourself in your podcast and listen for that voice, listen for that delivery and say, I want more of that. And what was different about that? Because you were probably in your zone of genius where you were and maybe
mm
not rushed,
mm
but you were in your zone and like you want to get that because that's what people connect with, right? So to answer your question, so I have my live show, which has been kind of like in and out, petering in and out on hiatus, but it's on its way back.
Good, good,
So
good.
yes, so Just As Share Live. Primarily, my audience is on LinkedIn. So shout out to everybody right now watching LinkedIn. Mwah. Love you guys. You guys are awesome. They're my ride or dies. They show up and they're amazing people. Whether they're team live or team replay. Love you
There you
both.
go. There you go.
Um, and then, so I have the podcast that we were talking about. So that is called Icons and Insights. And that was a podcast. We're actually transitioning into another one now, which is exciting. So that was a podcast developed to give a voice to a specific company where we wanted to make sure the investors were aware of what's going on, the network that the CEO has, and then just the industry where where the podcast was focused on. So it's a really interesting one, and we did some great stuff there. So that's a really cool podcast. And I'm working on a personal branding podcast called
Yeah.
Branded in 10,
Mm.
and it's more about the mindset people need when they're branding themselves, less about the day to day action stuff that I teach in other stuff. And yeah, so that's what I'm doing. Then I'm, guesting on other people's podcasts when they don't make me fill out a form.
I was waiting for that. I I was waiting for the form for the form thing. Yeah, I was waiting for
I
that.
have a problem with forms. I know it's like my one diva thing. I am like the most down to earth person, but if you want me to be on your podcast and you send me a form, it's not that I don't want to. I just a form.
She's
Yeah.
okay. Yeah, she does. Okay, okay. What? I'm not gonna put you on blast.
Aren't you having somebody on your show that's going to be talking about onboarding guests and all that stuff and
Yes, yes.
forms and all that
Angie,
stuff?
Angie, Angie
Yes.
will Angie Shorson. She will be on April 13th. Actually, I think it's gonna be at 2 p.m. She's over in the UK. So yeah, we're gonna talk about 4 onboarding mistakes. But she actually liked my onboarding process, which was great. So,
Mhm.
so yeah, yeah,
Mhm.
that's
And I
that's a little
appreciate
dig
the
at you.
accommodations that you made for me to be on your show. Guys, I want to everybody who's watching right now on LinkedIn and in my community, I definitely want to encourage you to subscribe to this channel over on YouTube. So Podcasters Live. If you are thinking about podcasting, especially right now, I know we haven't gotten into this. I know we're running
No,
up on time, but we
no, we're good.
should talk about. No, we did not talk about LinkedIn Podcast Network. We did
We
not talk
oh
about
we
that.
listen to me. I tried to close this up, but I'm not going to because we got to talk about a couple other things too that just
Okay.
because you spurred some other things. So go ahead. I'm sorry.
So yeah, I
Finish the
just want
promo.
to. Yes, I'll give you that promo because it's worth it. If you guys really want to understand what's going on in the podcast and live streaming game and how they work well together, whether you're working on one or yes, David, that's right. I hate forms too.
I put that up there for you.
I appreciate that. But definitely subscribe to this because there's so many resources. And guys, you don't know when you see who's coming up on the lineup of the like I am and I'm not jealous, but I mean, really, I bet you there are a lot of people who have interview shows who are absolutely jealous right now of who's on your lineup because you got a rocking lineup of amazing experts that can help you guys accelerate your live show or your podcast. And also, I'm
Oh,
going to throw in a little plug for me around. So, LinkedIn Learning
yes.
I did a LinkedIn learning unit module, whatever, on LinkedIn Live. So it's going through the final review process right now, and I'll let you guys know when that's up. So I'll keep you posted on that. But yes, I did a whole thing on LinkedIn Live, and it's more for beginners and stuff like that. But there's some really good stuff in there.
Excellent, excellent. So there is like one thing, maybe one or two things that I did want to say, and Sean brings this up, right? Because you and I, we talk about this a lot, kind of in our conversations and things that
Mm,
I've been trying to kind of get away from
mm,
this idea, this concept of zone of genius, right?
mm,
I
mm,
think this will, and I think this will help a lot of people. We'll talk about LinkedIn Live here in a second, but
mm,
in podcasting, excuse me. But this idea about zone of genius, I mean, for me, honestly, it has been revolutionary, and I'm not joking. Those of you who know me, I don't say things, flippantly. But when you and I started having our conversations and, you started talking to me a little bit about my zone of genius, and dude, just because you can do that doesn't mean that you should.
mm.
Could stand you. I couldn't stand
But
you.
it's so
Go ahead. Go ahead and
true.
elaborate.
It's so true. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. And but here's the thing that people need to do, and this was something that really helped me say yes until you know it's a no.
Mm,
So, especially in order for you to get into your zone, you got to know it's your zone. But you'll know quickly when something is not your zone, but don't stay in places that are not your zone, right? And the more you try
mm,
things, you've got to in order to innovate your own brand, you've got to do try things to iterate and move along the process and eventually you get to this innovation. So one thing that's great to hear, Harry.
yeah, it
Just saw
is.
that quote. Yeah. One thing that you've got to do is try things, right? And you will find, and that's because here's the thing
Yeah.
that I think that this undue pressure on professionals, consultants, entrepreneurs, especially those who are starting off, they want to, they're told to niche,
Mm,
be an expert
mm,
or niche.
mm-hmm.
And if you can't niche yet, like you want to, you know that this is conventional wisdom and it's something you should be doing.
Correct.
No, it's not. If you can't niche, that means you're not ready to niche,
Correct. Come
right?
on.
And stop
Come on.
putting that pressure, right?
Hold up,
Because
man. If hold up. All right. If you're not, come on, because and I am guilty of that. Of like, hey, you need to niche down, niche down, niche
Mhm,
down.
mhm,
But
mhm.
you just said it right. Say it again for the people, as my friend James Hicks says. Say it for the people in the back of the room who may have missed that, because that is genius. As we start to talk about zone of genius, there, I got bars. Go ahead.
Mm, mm, mm. So at the end of the day, if you can't niche, if you are struggling so hard to niche, no matter how much people say that you got to niche, I get it. Yes, I am finally niching, but it took 10 years for me to get to this point. But here's how you niche. You say yes until you know it's a no, because what you do is you narrow down, and niching means saying no to the things that you don't want to do
Woo,
anymore.
woo.
Yo, that needs to go in the book.
Okay, come on, man. I've been.
That's the new definition of niching.
What is it again? Say it again. Say it again.
Saying no niching is saying no to the things that you know you don't wanna do anymore, because eventually, if you've said yes enough and then you say no enough, you will narrow your way down. Sometimes it's just too hard to pick. Yes, you can pick a zone,
Mm,
but a niche is so specific. So, yeah, you have to have a zone,
mm,
right? But then it's that niche. It's that zone of genius is the niche. It's that
mm.
spot that you gotta get to, but it takes time.
It takes time, right? But I think it also
Mhm.
takes courage, right?
Yes,
it
and
takes
repetition.
and
So,
repetition.
because you can have all the time in the world, but if you've been only doing 1 here, 1 here,
Come
1
on.
here, as opposed to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7,
Yes.
8, this is
Yes.
8 opportunities to say yes until you know it's a no. Where if you only done 3 things in the same period of time,
Yeah.
it's repetition. So get your reps in and then you'll get to your niche.
Are you talking are you talking about practice?
Practice? Not the game.
Not the,
Not the
not the
game that we
game.
live and die for. Practice. I'm
You
talking
you
practice.
talking about practice.
Not the
Practice.
game.
Not the game. Not the, I'm sorry
Practice.
guys, we if you don't know that one, you need to go look that one up. My man,
Yeah.
AI, Allen Iverson,
Mhm. Mhm.
classic quote. And we talking about practice.
We're talking
Um
about practice.
not a game.
Not the game. Not the game that I live and die for.
I know. I
Practice.
know. Hold up, Cher. I know I'm supposed to be a franchise player. I know. I get all of that. I get all of that. But we talking about practice.
Practice.
Okay, I digress. I
Man,
digress.
practice.
I digress, people. Go check it. Go look up that quote after we finish.
After we
Please.
wrap.
LinkedIn
Mhm.
is getting into this whole podcast thing, man.
Mhm.
Right?
Mhm.
Like they are going full
They're going
into it.
ham
Yeah.
into podcasting and live audio.
Yeah.
So these are the 2 places, and they are also you're gonna see over the next 6 months, because 'cause I'm in the creator program, as far as I have a the creator management program. So not the one, that, the mentoring program, I can't remember what that one's called, but I have a creator manager assigned to me, and, so we get kinda like inside scoop of what's happening, and so the things that I can tell based off of what's coming down the pipeline, there's a lot of stuff that we don't know, but there's stuff that I can tell by what they're prioritizing. Live events,
Mm,
podcasting,
mm, mm.
podcasting live, as well as audio and podcasting. So you've got that, like you've got these things right now that are happening. And when any new network starts adding new stuff,
Come
guess
on.
what? The algorithm supports the new stuff,
Go
right?
figure. Go
So
figure.
you got to take a look. And so you have to remember that the one thing that when Clubhouse first came out, everybody who was like a LinkedIn person on Clubhouse was like, "Oh my gosh, if this was just on LinkedIn." Like, that's what everybody was saying. It's there now, but the thing with the live video, the live audio, they still are working out the user experience. It's not quite there yet as far as and it's interesting because your motto up front around, the problem is discoverability
Mhm.
as far as podcasts are going. It's the same thing right now for LinkedIn. They haven't designed it in a way that live events are easy to discover. So that's the problem, but they're working on that behind the scenes. So when they get that going, when they
Mm.
get that side of the interface going. But imagine, okay, so back to let's make this full circle again,
Come
right?
on.
So
Come on.
as they continue to grow the podcast network, right? If you can think about strategically how you can create your podcast at work for work, you're on the platform that talks about work.
Mhm. Mm.
Don't you think it might be a good place to consider? And yes, there's not full access to it yet, but that's what they do. They roll it out, but then they roll it out further. And so this is the time, especially if you're brand new to podcasting, this is time to get your feet wet so that when it rolls out on a more public
Mm.
accessibility track, then you'd be like, yo, I'm ready for prime time.
Yeah. Don't wait.
So yeah,
Don't wait.
don't
Don't wait.
wait. Start.
I think the other thing too that and I want to allay some fears to rest with people,
Mhm.
and then I want to go through some of these comments real quick too, because there may be a
Mhm.
question or two in here that I want to make sure that we kind of address. The thing about podcasting, people, please understand this. There are probably about 2.5 podcasts, maybe 2.8 podcasts that are actually out there. But here's the thing. Only
2.8 what?
about 30 to 40, huh? Was that
You said 2.5 or 2.8 million?
million?
Billion? Okay,
Million,
sorry.
million,
Alright.
yeah,
Okay.
million. That's it. That's it.
Mm.
Right. But only about 30 to 40% of those actual podcasts are active. Active meaning
Mm.
this isn't Steve's definition. This is the industry's definition. Is that a podcast has been produced or released within the
Mhm.
last 7 to 14 days.
Mhm.
So when you
Mhm.
start to think about the entry into podcasting, a lot of times There's so much buzz around it, right? Everybody's like, "Oh my gosh, I'm going to start a podcast. I want to start a podcast." Half the people don't. So please
Mm,
understand that. Then that of that other half, there's only probably about 20% of them that will actually do it and actually do it consistently. So
mm,
when Cher's talking about get started on these platforms and get started, I 100% agree. And I think that's where people fall short is that they look at all these numbers and look at all this other stuff and they don't get started and realize, like, listen to me, that 2.5 is only about like maybe 1.5, maybe 1.4, if you will, that's
mm.
actually out there doing something. So you have to think a little bit differently. Go ahead and get started, get your concept down, narrow your focus, things like that. So I want to go
And
through,
then also
go for it. Go ahead.
just to touch on the discoverability piece, especially when you think about, being discovered by a network that you've already been building.
Come on.
So that's where LinkedIn may have an advantage, at least for the start for your starting block of getting up, because if it's already going to be, accessible through the network,
Correct.
and these are people who are on the network, they don't have to leave anywhere to go anywhere else to listen to your podcast, to download your podcast. So I'm just thinking forward thinking, it's still in its infancy, but
Hmm.
when you think about that, if it can be housed on the network in your profile, however they're doing it, because it's still this was just launched last month in February.
Right.
So we'll see how it actually plays out. And they started with some big podcasts, but they have applications open. So if you
Hmm.
Google LinkedIn podcast network application, you can find it and apply to put your podcast on there.
Agreed.
But the bottom line is again, going back to that Clubhouse connection, is that thought of, man, I wish this was on LinkedIn because my network is there.
Hmm.
So that whole discoverability piece is your network, especially if you're engaging your network, is more likely to, for the first time, check you out and maybe on LinkedIn's podcast network and then go in and subscribe wherever else they subscribe.
100%.
Because it's just they're just taking your RSS feed. It's not like it's housed in LinkedIn. It's just like it's everywhere else. So,
Yeah, but this goes back to your point earlier. If you guys are looking at this live and staying with us, then you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. If not, if your team replay, like make sure you go back and listen to this on the replay as well. But this goes back to your earlier point around the why
mm,
behind the podcast, right? If
mhm,
you are fixated on downloads and things like that, which listen to man, I can do a whole show about that, and I actually will be doing a show about downloads and the misconception around that.
mm,
But your why behind your podcast. So you start to think about, your podcast as a tool, right? Cher
mhm,
talked about this, using it as a tool on a kind of enclosed, platform that you've already been able to build your brand on. So it's not about the downloads. It should be about the actual exposure that you are trying to
mhm,
create more so than the actual downloads, because it doesn't matter if you get, like she just said earlier, if you get 500 downloads, that's great. But how about if you get five of the right people that are actually listening to your content? And this is where I go, and I'm sorry, I'm gonna go on a tangent for a second because this podcast is live. So I'm gonna go on a tangent a little bit about like downloads. I apologize. Okay, here's my little rant real quick. So please get this. Downloads are great to a degree if that's where you are putting your bread and butter into the download. But here's the one thing: I have never heard a podcaster say that they don't want people to listen to their podcast. So the biggest thing that you should be thinking about is consumption of your podcast, meaning
mhm,
how long are they actually listening to your entire podcast? Please understand that, right?
mm,
You start thinking about downloads. It is about, so if you put an episode out that's an hour long and people are dropping off at 20 minutes, that should tell you a little something. Consistently dropping off at 20 minutes, that should tell you something, maybe a little bit about your content. And here's why: I'm raising my hand because that's exactly what I did. I released these 1 hour episodes that people were dropping off at the 30-minute mark. Guess what I did? I fixed my content strategy. I lowered my timing. And guess what? My consumption went from 30 to 40% to 70 to 80% of people
mm,
actually finishing my podcast. And now I've even shortened it. I've even shortened it out to 15 to 20 minutes, and people are actually at the 80, almost 90% of listening to the entire podcast.
mm.
So I'd rather have people listening to my content than people just downloading, because guess what? When they download it, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're listening to it. It could sit in that queue, whether app you're using, until you
Mhm.
actually hit play to download it. My apologies. I was on my little rant for a second, because uh-oh,
Uh-oh.
you got to, I see, I was just on fire, and, you know,
Let's see.
Share's camera couldn't handle it.
Couldn't handle it. There
Share's
we go.
camera can't,
I
Share's
am
can't.
back.
Hey, Matt says, "Hey, I'm late. Can you start over, please?" Matt, yeah, not so much, not so much. I wanted to put this back up here too, because I think this one, and I appreciate you saying this, Harry says, I struggle with merging authenticity and professionalism. This is
Oh,
this has
again.
this that's okay. That's all right. This is beyond
As
helpful.
long as you can still hear me.
I can still hear you. That's okay. We still got you. We still got you. Someone says, I remember when I first started, my husband asked me, "Why are you talking like
Love
that's
it.
awesome. That is awesome. That's awesome. Like, yeah, why are you talking like that? I don't even
Mhm,
know that.
mhm,
And this was
mhm.
Carmelita. I think she was talking about the podcast that you were talking about starting, if I'm not mistaken. So,
No, 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 put me on the that was who is gonna be on your calendar on the
oh,
13th?
my bad. Yeah. Oh,
Yes.
okay. Yeah. Thank you. There you go. There you go. Yeah.
Again,
On the
what's up
13th.
with my equipment today?
That's okay. I would mess with you, but you got a similar camera that I have. It's
Hubba.
not that. Um Atas says, I love you, share. Nice to meet you through the stream.
Great to meet you too.
uh and then Sean, thank you, Steve Share. I think he wanted to make sure that we talked a little bit about, well, at least I wanted to make sure we spoke a little bit about that zone of genius, because I know he put it out there. Cher
Okay,
Jones
cool.
rocks. She's all right.
I'm
She's all right.
alright.
She's all right. She's good. She's good people. She's good people. Um, Dr. Elo, thank you, sir. That this is so good. Thank you,
I
sir. We
appreciate
appreciate you,
that.
man. And then Carmelita, if you're not ready to niche
Mm,
down, then don't. There you go.
mhm.
Share dropping some bars. She got some bars. She got some
Just
bars.
a few.
And Carla says, yes, share. Yes. I mean,
Mm,
I think she's just saying yes to everything that you said, which
that's
is agreed.
okay. I receive it.
You receive, of course you do. Of course you do. And then Dr. Elo is
A
doubling
double
down.
down
Yeah.
on live streaming.
Yes.
Love
Yes.
it.
Yeah. He and I, we're going to be talking about live streaming on LinkedIn a lot when he comes on the show.
Mm,
Say yes until you say no. There you go. And I remember you.
mhm,
I think said it to you guys earlier. Cher was on my one of my first podcasts when I first started back, the Worthy podcast, and it was an episode that I put together with. Oh my gosh, I had Dinah Gladney on there. I had Paul Norford on there, and they were all talking about something that they would tell themselves 20 years ago. So that episode is still up there. So if you want to go in there, check that one out. We got quite a few different people on there, but I love what Cher had to actually say on an episode that was probably about a year and a half ago or something like
mhm,
that we actually did that,
mhm.
which is
We go
actually pretty
way
cool.
back.
I know, right? We go way back. Oh, I think I
Way
put that one
back.
up there already.
Back into time.
Yeah. I just want to acknowledge everybody, because look at a lot of people that have been in here for the entire
For
show.
the duration, yeah.
Yeah, what's going on, Walter? The first so we were talking
Mm,
about practice. So
mhm.
Walter's been with me for a while. We've been connected for about since 2020, and I won't say significantly older than Walter, but I'm a little older, and I whenever we're talking, I tend to use a lot of old school pop culture, and so
Okay.
he doesn't get them. He doesn't get all of
But he
them.
got this one
He got
though.
that one. He got that one. He got that one. So we do have a question. Question: I am not a solo act, and not on your level. I became worn out and frustrated trying to figure out all this stuff. Any thoughts on working with a producer? Share.
Yeah.
I'll let you go first.
It depends on where so one of the things you can do when working with a producer is coming up with your format, because I think that at sometimes when you so it depends on if you're gonna one, I guess working with a producer, one, it's budget. right? So if
Yeah.
you have the budget, then awesome. But what you may want to do is work with a producer to help you produce your repeatable format.
Mm,
Right. So coming up with your concept so that you are plugging into your concept as opposed to trying to think of something new every single time. Then also working with a producer to come up with your content ideas and flush them out. And then that may help you. And then if you work with the right producer who can show you how to produce on your level. So they may be more of an instructor slash producer and use things like StreamYard or Restream or Melon, where you can do a lot of the heavy lifting while you're live. So there's less of the, and you don't have to go live. You can go live to record, right?
mm,
So you can
mhm.
use the live streaming software has come so far. So in my podcast, Icons and Insights, we use Restream, but we don't go live. We record it in the studio,
Right.
and then I take it and I chop it up a bit, but and then I add my own graphics and stuff like that. But if you want to get it done, you can record in StreamYard or Restream or Melon and get your graphics going and good to go. And I think there is actually a producer on Walter's a producer, no?
Yep, yep,
Yeah,
yep.
and I don't know, I think you produce as well. So, I mean, you've got options. And, so but yeah, working with a producer to help you with your content ideas, with your show concept, because I think half the battle is working
Yes.
through that. And then once you get that, and sometimes it's just you just don't have the insight and the perspective to move that idea along quickly enough. So this way, working with a producer will just get you there faster.
100%, 100%. And I
So
think,
call my man Steve and
yeah,
just
man,
like see what he can do. Yeah,
lot of
man.
mercy, lot of mercy. So, Carmelita, gosh, when I was trying to, I was trying to figure out my initial podcast and what I wanted to do, I realized that the content was actually pretty decent, but the audience was incorrect. And so I actually got a podcast coach. There you go. She's back. She's back. Amazing. And I got a podcast coach, and he and I, we sat down and we chatted, and we looked at my professional career. And one of the things that I've been doing for a long time was a retail exec. And he said, "Well, hey, have you ever thought about doing like retail stuff? Because I love leadership. This is my initial podcast." And I was like, "Okay." And he said, "Well, hey, here's what I need you to do. I need you to come back with 13 episodes for your podcast." And Carmelita, I actually came back with 40. I came back with 40 different episodes, and I have been utilizing all 40 of those episodes because I've been able to break all of those things down. I said that to say is because, he helped provide some measure of clarity for me for my initial for my content and what I was going to be focused on. So to the point earlier about niching down, initially I wasn't ready to niche down, but I think once I found my zone of genius, boom, bada bing, bada boom, there you go. How we tying this all together, then I was able to focus in. Now, one of the things that Cher spoke about was actually talking about having pillars, right? Ideally, maybe you can have some pillars or some things. And that's what we work with clients with the Podcasters Live, is helping them understand and develop the pillars for their content, because you can run everything, all your content ideas through those pillars, through the filter of those, and if it doesn't go through that filter, then you don't do it. And that just helps you streamline your ideas and your thoughts also from a producer standpoint, because that's exactly what a producer is going to do. They're going to
Mhm.
help you not just produce the show, but they're going to make sure that you actually buy into the content that you want to produce. The tendency is that when we start to pod fade, we either mismanage our expectations, or we mismanage, our content, and how important our content is to the people that are listening. You're right. We
Mm.
think, man, we dropping dimes and all this other stuff, and then no one's listening because you haven't done your research and you haven't really
Mhm.
listened to the market, right? If my mom was still alive when I did retail leadership with Steve Worthy, she probably would have listened to the first 5 episodes, and then the sixth episode, I'm like, "Hey, mom, did you listen to number 6?" She's like, "Nah, baby, I ain't listening to number. That's not my area." So
Yeah.
you will have people that will listen to your stuff for a period of time, but you got to make sure that you're dialing in and that you believe in the ideas that you're trying to present as a podcaster as well. So that's
So
my own.
Carmelita, give Steve a call. Go on the website, podcasterslive.com, and Yeah, check them
Thank
out.
y'all. Thank y'all. Oh, they love the lovelace. Just
Don't they look great? Oh.
yeah, just commenting together.
Love
There
it.
you go. I know you were. I know you were. But nah, this was really dope. Thank you. Uh-oh, uh-oh. Look
Awesome.
who's in the look who's in the house. Look who's in the house. What's up? What's going on, dude? How are you doing, man? Good to see you here. And then we'll close with this one. Thank you both so much for the answer. Yes. Use melon. There you go. I found Steve because of Monty. Yeah.
There you
Love
go.
Monty. Monty and I are actually going to be speaking um in Atlanta on actually it's on May 12th. We're going to be speaking, but we'll be down there on May 11th. And Walter is actually going to be there too.
I'm gonna be
And
down there too.
you gonna be there as
Crazy.
well. There you go as well. And
I'm
it's
just watching though.
it's it's the African American Marketing Association Summit, and we're gonna be talking about digital marketing. Myself, I'm gonna be talking about monetization from a live streaming standpoint and the idea of how to use your live stream to kind of grow your market. So yeah, Monty. I was just on Monty's show about a week or so ago, maybe a little longer
Mhm.
than that, and we just connected.
That was a great
Such a
episode.
great dude, such a great dude. We got a lot of really positive responses from that as well too. So before we close out, Cher, you got a whole bunch of stuff going on, and
Mhm.
I like this. I like this one. I like this. Here's the reason I like this. I don't. We're gonna go back to the top, but here's and you let me know this. I didn't even know this is from. See, guys, look at this. Do you guys see this?
This is
Okay,
so meta right now.
did you see that? This is this is from Cher and I. This is from Worthy Retail U, Retail Leadership with Steve Worthy. This is from ours that actually made it into this whole thing. Anyway, I just wanted to do that just to kind of say that. What is this? What is this thing? I know what it is, and I want other people to
Mhm.
understand what this is, and then why you have you because you're super amazing and how you actually repurpose your content and things that are out there. Talk a little bit about what this is.
So LinkedIn is really doubling down on supporting creators, and again, another reason why you want to start thinking about creating or putting your content on LinkedIn as well for everybody who's watching, especially the podcast community and the live community. So one of the things that they're doing is they're trying to support new creators in creating content and best practices. So this is one of their first guides on best practices for content. So what they have done, and it was really kind of cool, is they identified, for me personally, they identified like three or four different pieces of my content and broke down why this is a good piece of content or the best practices behind the content. So I was really thrilled about that. And so I wanted to share this with my network, but by sharing it alone, it just looks like a LinkedIn branded piece. So there's another piece right there. That's
Yes.
kind of, do they know about do they know what you do and all that kind of stuff. So it was a video, so they talk about that. And what was interesting for me is that I wanted to be able to share this as a win, because I find that I over the period of my career, I don't celebrate my wins as much as I should. And this was a big deal, especially for someone who trains about this platform. And so for the big LinkedIn corporation to like say, Share is a creator to watch, Share is a
You were
creator
all over
to
this. You
I'm
were all
all
over
over
this.
it. I was so surprised. Like, this is crazy, right? So like there's tons of my content as best practices. So that's huge, right? So I wanted to share that with my network, but I also wanted to do something cool so people notice it. So if you see there, I'm kind of breaking down some scroll stopper strategies here. So I included their original work in the background. I used Canva to create this, and I wanted to convey how I was feeling. And like I said before, my copy always sounds like me. So okay, this is kind of a big deal for me. I say that. I talk
Yes,
like
you
that.
do.
So and then what I wanted to do is continue to share the rest of the guide so that those people could see it, could learn from it. And then in my post I talked about, celebrating a win, but also the teacher in me. So this now lends to my brand as someone who teaches people how to create content and how to create a brand for work at work. I wanted to be able to ensure that that brand experience of hearing me or experiencing my teaching was in there as well. So I break down just a little bit about how I created this and why I created this way. and just the strategy behind it. So it was just a really cool kind of meta thing because it's like I'm talking about like I am super meta with everything. So it's like I'm talking about a best practices guide where my content is featured as best practices, and then I'm doing multiple best practices in how I'm posting it and then teaching it. So it's super meta. But anyways, yeah, thank you for sharing that. It was a big deal for me. And
Good,
to be
good.
recognized by LinkedIn. And I mean, there are over 800 million people on that platform. And this is one of their first guides that they're putting out there. And they included this one.
I
So
know. You were all over this, and well, thank you, because I think you sent this to me. You were like, "Hey, check this out. This is awesome." And
mhm.
and I was like, "Okay, cool. No, this is awesome." And you were like, "Dude, did you like see your little picture there?" I was like, "My little." You didn't say little. I said little picture.
You said
But
little.
I was just like, "Oh, this is actually pretty dope. This is actually
Yeah,
pretty
I thought that
cool."
was so cool.
I was like,
Yeah.
"Oh snap!" That's been one of my one of my biggest episodes as well. Having you on there as well too. The other thing where people can reach you. Let me make sure I got that correct too. All right. So this is your website,
Yeah.
which is super well done, super well done. How can people kind of connect with you? And because here's the thing, people. Okay, all right. I gotta I'm gonna say this because she'll probably say it, but and I just want to say this. Like, Cher don't work with just anybody. Okay, she just don't. So if you're not serious and Um, I'm trying my best
It's
to
that I
see.
gotta know that I can help you, and that's really at the end of the day, I gotta know that I can help you, right? And I gotta be excited about your brand and what you wanna accomplish with your brand. So, those are just those are important things for me, and, so I'm really focusing a lot of my work on my keynote sessions and my employee training, but I do work with individuals as far as coaching as well. So, yeah, if you're interested, please reach out on LinkedIn is probably the best place. I love staying connected. And instead of just hitting follow, you can, tap in and hit connect if you want to connect. And, or just head over to trainwithsociallyactive.com and we can get connected over there.
Excellent, excellent, excellent. We got one little last. Dave says, I neglected my leaking account for a long time. I'll have to take another look at it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So before you do that, take a look at her. Take a look at shares. Uh,
Connect with me, Dave.
LinkedIn. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Connect with her. Take a look at her account, because when you look at her account, you're gonna want to go back and change yours. Um, because it is so well written. It's
Mm.
to the point,
Thank you.
and it actually it tells a story, and it actually lets you know exactly what she does. Right? There's so many LinkedIn, myself included. I think I gotta make some changes. And you don't really know what the person's doing, or what they're about. And if you want to make sure you do that, go to shares as well too. Congratulations to you, share.
Thank you.
No, excellent. This is awesome. Share. Oh my gosh, I'm quite tonight, but this is so good stuff. Also, always such an informative stream. Thank you so much. I appreciate that, Samantha. Oh, I hate to go. I hate to go.
Gotta go, gotta
It's
go, gotta
it's
go. Don't
8:30.
go.
I know,
It
right?
is.
It's
It's
it,
8:30.
it's it's 8:30. We're supposed to be
We
here
gotta tap
on.
out.
Yeah, we're supposed to be. Yeah, it's almost my bedtime, man. We're supposed to be here only for an hour. Um, Share. I just want to. I want to thank you for being here on Podcasters Live, and always, supporting anything,
Of
and
course,
almost
my
everything
family.
that I. Oh, there we go. See,
It's just
they didn't like me trying to get sentimental, but I'm gonna wait for you. I'm gonna wait for
all
you.
right. And I'm back. It's
There you
on
go.
my side. We figure out this technical stuff after.
There you go. All right. So I wanted to I wanted to thank you. So this will go in editing. I wanted to personally thank you for your support, right? For everything that we're doing over at Podcasters Live, and things Worthy Retail You, right? Your input and your insight has been nothing short of just amazing. And it doesn't like me talking like this. I
No, it
can't get too
doesn't.
nice.
Getting
I got a
all
joke. I
sentimental
know.
and
I got a joke. I got a joke. So what he said Cher's ready for the after party.
that's
Right?
right.
That's what
That's
it is.
right.
That's
My
what she's
camera's like, "It's done, yo. You guys been going for an hour and a
yeah, the
half."
camera
Like,
the
"Party
camera
done."
the camera's been drinking a little bit. Camera's
Look at
like,
this.
Yo, that's it, man."
We gotta figure this out because this is gonna drive me
Yeah,
nuts.
because I'm not gonna let you go until I say what I gotta say, and you need to be on screen because that would be kind of weird.
There,
That would be
kinda
kind of
weird. I'm
weird.
here. I don't know how long it's gonna last,
I
my
know.
friend.
So there we go. Hey, thank you so much for being here, and it is quite evident in the comments and I'm quite sure on the replay the amount of value that you have added to this community. To myself personally, I'm gonna just keep going until you pop
Keep
back on the
going, keep
screen.
going.
I'm just gonna keep going. You've just been a huge value add, and I just thank you so much for your friendship and who you are, and who you are to me, and what you've been doing for me as well too. So just wanted to thank you for that.
Well, it's awesome, and I've been enjoying every step of the way. So this is more to come. That's all I'm gonna say.
There you go.
More to come. There's just
More
too much awesome
to-
here. Got to keep the awesome rolling.
Gotta keep the
Anyways,
awesome
yeah, thank
rolling.
you so much for having me on your show. Appreciate it more than you know. And yeah, you're doing great work in the community of podcasting and beyond and live streaming. So keep doing what you do. You are a rising star worth watching.
Oh man. I will take that. All right. Have a good night. Stay on the in the green screen for me while I close this puppy out. All right.
All right.
All right. Woo wee. Man, oh man. I don't know. I really hope you guys had a pen and paper, tonight because there was just too much information. And I tried my best to stop at certain points to give you certain things. Um, but the information tonight was I it was outstanding. It should have been instructive, constructive for you. It should help you kind of maybe break down some of those walls that you have been probably trying to build personally about where you currently are within your content creation journey, within your podcast creation journey, with whatever it is that you're thinking about from a professional standpoint, where you are with your current brand, your personal brand, and where you want to go. The information tonight, if you would have paid thousands of dollars for this information tonight, but you got it for free, right? Podcasters Live, our goal is for you to help grow your community and your influence through the power of live streaming, right? The number one issue is not getting started, it's discoverability. And tonight, having an amazing personal brand will help you with that journey of becoming discovered and more people hearing about what it is that you have to say. So we want to thank you for joining us tonight. You're interested in, learning a little bit more about us, you can see it scrolling down there, podcasterslive.com, and our YouTube channel down there as well. Have a great night, and God bless.